Great to see everyone. Welcome back to the Voice of College Football and our yearly off-season project of ranking all the coaches in the Power 5. We do the same with the Group of 5. Look out for that series coming up. But we are in the midst of our series ranking 69 Power 5 coaches. Check out the first edition where we ranked number 69 all the way up to number 45. Keep in mind that this is a current ranking. We are not ranking based on legacy. At the same time, we are ranking within reason. If a coach that has a tremendous track record had one down season, we're not going to plummet him all the way to the bottom. It's a current ranking, how I would both not just rank, but how I would hire these coaches today. All right, let's get to it. And at the conclusion of this series, we're going to open up the live stream, take your calls and comments and questions, and your feedback on our Power 5 coaches rankings. We go to number 44 as we pick up the list with Steve Sarkisian of Texas. All right, Sark, you got to win big. This is your third huge job, Washington, USC. Basically, you did a decent job on the field, and your teams were decent. However, you had two programs that are top 10 worthy, especially at USC, of course, and largely your predecessors and your successors did better than you did. I don't know why Steve Sarkisian was hired for this Texas job. He was not the best candidate for a top 5 program. He is recruited well, just brought in the number 3 class in the 2023 cycle. However, so did Tom Herman, so did Charlie Strong. Sark has a creative offensive mind. Can he lead a program, however? He can lead it to a certain extent. We know it's not going to run off the rails for the most part. 5-7 his first year, improved greatly to 8-4, then blew the bowl game against Washington. So Steve Sarkisian, much to prove as the 44th ranked coach in the country on our Voice of College Football list. On to number 43 and the anti-Steve Sarkisian to a certain extent, at least in regards to a situation. Sark's got it all. He's got the money, the facilities, the brand, the recruiting footprint. Greg Schiano comes to Rutgers, and he's basically, to a certain extent, trying to upgrade a Group of 5 program. And he did it the first go-around, but that was in the Big East, and did a remarkable job in lifting Rutgers football to its zenith, its pinnacle in the 2000s in the history of the program, going back to when it played its first college football game, the first college football game back in 1869. Rutgers football did its best under Greg Schiano. He left and they fell apart. He took him back over a few years ago, and amidst a 21-game losing streak in the Big Ten in which they were being largely obliterated week to week by 40 and 50 points. So he's brought Rutgers back to respectability. They are on the brink of reaching a bowl game, but the offense is deplorable, and he's going to have a rough time trying to upgrade the offense to the place where it can compete in the Big Ten. Greg Schiano got to make a bowl game. You do a remarkable job in terms of building a structure, a culture, the process is in play, but I don't know if he can get it done at Rutgers, especially in that division. And the Big Ten going without divisions, you would think, going forward, and Rutgers is going to have a tough time competing. All right, at number 42, we go to a wild card in Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze taking the reins at Auburn. Auburn can win big. They went to a BCS championship game in 2013. They won it all in 2010. They got back to the SEC championship game in 2017. So this is a top 15 program. At its best, it's even better than that. It's been largely recruiting in the top 10 in the nation under Gus Malzahn. Well, the Brian Harsin experiment did not work for whatever reason. Much of it his fault, also the fault of the university and the boosters and the fan base. All right, Hugh Freeze, can we really count what he accomplished at Ole Miss? He was cheating. He also had his issues off the field that contributed to his demise there, but the on-the-field product was produced by cheating. Then he goes to Liberty. He does do a great job with the Flames in lifting them to a place where they could compete with mid-level Power 5 teams. So Hugh Freeze, we've got it at number 42. Let's go. Let's see what you got at Auburn. At number 41, we go to another dichotomy comparing Texas, Rutgers. We can compare the same here with Auburn and Kansas. Lance Leipold difficult situation at Kansas, of course, not just because the football history is awful and they haven't won anything since 2007, but also because he was left in a difficult spot by one Les Miles, who ruins another program here. But we saw the big improvement by the Jayhawks. Even though they weren't winning games in 2021, they were so improved, playing one-score games with teams so much better than them down the stretch. And then 2022 was fun to watch. 6-6, almost beat Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl, competed week to week despite losing their starting quarterback and their dynamic playmaker, Jalen Johnson. Tough spot to recruit. We will see if Lance Leipold jumps to a bigger job or he tries to grind it out at Kansas and do something special in Lawrence. All right, our number 40 coach in the country is Dan Lanning of Oregon. He inherited a good football team with a lot of talent and good recruiting and a good program. So he was on solid footing to begin with. He has brought in 2 really good recruiting classes. He's had the number 1 class in the Pac-12. His forte is defense, of course. He was the defensive coordinator for a national championship Georgia team. He needs to bring his defensive philosophy and instill it, this much like the Brent Venables situation at Oklahoma that we talked about in the last video, where Dan Lanning's a defensive guy. He got this job because he was one of the best coordinators in the country on the defensive side of the ball. Well, the defense was awful last year for Oregon. He's getting his players in play, but you would think that his defense should be better. And Bo Nix is back this year. Could be a big year for Oregon. We've got Dan Lanning at number 40. At number 39, a guy that most people didn't know what to expect or that they would really expect much from him. Joey Maguire leaves Baylor as the linebacker coach, comes to Texas Tech as a first-time coach, and really has a tremendous job at Texas Tech, going 8-5, out-coaching Lane Kiffin in the Texas Bowl to finish at 8-5, won that game easily, and also consider that he had little talent and really little stability at quarterback, and the players that they did have got injured. So he played multiple quarterbacks, still went 7-5, and Texas Tech got better throughout the season. Check the TCU game. They led that game with 10 minutes left to play. Texas Tech also defeated Oklahoma and Texas for the first time in program history. Our number 39 coach, Joey Maguire, Texas Tech. On to number 38, and a coach who's switching jobs after doing a fine job in the Big Ten, and we got Jeff Brom at Louisville. What a job he did at Purdue. Keep in mind that the Boilermakers in the previous Big Ten seasons were 3-30 in the Big Ten. Jeff Brom built a winner at Purdue. They went to the Big Ten championship game. They regularly went to decent bowl games. Of course, he's known as a quarterback whisperer. He'll recruit the offensive skill position players at Louisville, no doubt, and he will develop quarterbacks and develop offenses. He's a great play caller. Jeff Brom led Purdue to something that they hadn't witnessed and experienced since the Joe Tiller days. And now he moves on to Louisville and competition in the ACC to hopefully move his alma mater to a next level in that conference. At number 37, we go out to the Pac-12 and Chip Kelly. I would think Chip Kelly would get the most range of selections on this list in regards to how most college football fans and analysts would rank him. I've got him at 37. Did a remarkable job at Oregon, and I don't know that that's not being lost at this point because it was more than a decade ago. Oregon went 33-3 with him as the head coach in the Pac-12. They went 46-7. They were dominant. They were a top 5 program. He goes to the NFL with mixed results, ultimately failed there with the Eagles and 49ers. So he comes to UCLA, and they're finally good. I don't know why it took him so long. He inherited a nice roster from Jim Mora, who was recruiting top 15 classes. But my goodness, they were awful, and it didn't look like for a time there that Chip Kelly was going to survive. But he has. And now they've put together an 8-4 followed by a 9-4. They did really come close to having a special season They were at 9-2. They were taking on USC for a right to go to the Pac-12 championship game. They blew that game based on turnovers, and then, of course, blew a double-digit lead in the Sun Bowl against Pitt. Still a nice season for Chip Kelly and company at 9-4. Now, after one more season in the Pac-12, they move to the Big Ten. We'll see if he's going to be along for the ride. At number 36, Mike Elko was not a head coach at this point last year. Was coming to Duke from Texas A&M as a defensive coordinator, and what a job he did. This flew under the radar of Sonny Dykes and what he accomplished at TCU and a few other spots across the nation, but Mike Elko had to be strongly considered for Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year. I gotta hope that he was ACC Coach of the Year. I don't get into those things and don't track those. Somebody can leave that in the comments section. Duke, under David Cutcliffe, who did a nice job, was well respected, but had grown stale, certainly. 1-17 in the ACC the two previous years. Mike Elko comes in. Not only does he go 9-4 after a bowl win against UCF, but check out the scores, and if you watched any Duke football, they came within one drive against North Carolina of going to the ACC championship game. They were competitive against everyone. You would think at a place like Duke, if he lifts them from whatever they were the year before, 3-9, to 9-4, that they're still going to get blown out against those better teams. But no, they were competitive against everyone. They lost all one-score games. Mike Elko, tremendous job at Duke. We've got him ranked at number 36 in the nation. So you talk about a coach who has tumbled from grace. I at one point ranked him as a top 10 coach in the nation, but you just cannot ignore the record. Despite the challenges at Northwestern, Pat Fitzgerald is losing it. My goodness. They went from the near ultimate overachievement program, winning 2 division championships in 4 years, finishing in the top 25 in the country 5 times, and Northwestern was never ranked in the preseason top 25. So he pulled that off 5 times at a program that was never ranked during his tenure of 18 seasons in the top 25. But over the last 2 seasons, where they're supposed to be cycling up at some point, it does not look good. They've had 2 completely atrocious seasons back-to-back, and 2023 looks to be more of the same. 4-20 the last 2 years, and this is a program that is not just failing to compete in the Big Ten. They're losing to Miami of Ohio and an FCS school from Illinois. Who was that? Southeast Illinois. Pat Fitzgerald, I respect him greatly. He's a favored son there at Northwestern, and certainly this is not a Scott Frost type situation. But if he doesn't start to win, if Northwestern takes football seriously, they're going to have to possibly go in another direction. Going down this list from team to team and program to program really magnifies the differences in programs and expectations, and more than that, resources. We go from Northwestern and Duke to Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher, of course, was brought there to compete for SEC championships. No, check that. Win SEC championships, and when you do that, you go to the playoffs, and therefore you're expected to compete for national championships. And he's a long ways away from that, and he's probably further away from that right now than he's been during his entire stay at Texas A&M, going on 6 seasons. That national championship with Florida State was a long, long time ago. It's still to his credit, still on his record. However, he comes to Texas A&M, recruits out of his mind, does a great job, and I'm not even counting the 22 class that was, under the NIL guidelines, the guidelines. He was still recruiting great before that. Kevin Sumlin did a pretty good recruiting job as well, but Jimbo Fisher upgraded the recruiting at Texas A&M. Built a team that looked like it should compete. Had the one nice season in 2020 where they went 9-1. They didn't really beat anyone, but they did win the Orange Bowl and finish in the top 5 in the nation. But other than that, a lot of 8-4 seasons at Texas A&M, and then thud this past season. Hasn't developed a quarterback. Again, has recruited out of his mind, but lost a lot of that 2022 class, and things are not looking good. Now we've got the Jimbo Bobby Petrino show at Texas A&M to see if they can somehow update the offense. I don't know if Bobby Petrino is the guy to do that, despite his track record I'm talking on the field of building really good offenses. The game might have passed him by at this point. So we got Jimbo Fisher at number 34 as he has taken a tumble down the rankings. No results at Texas A&M. On to number 33 and Pitt's Pat Narduzzi. This is the best Pitt program that we've seen in college football since the early to mid 1980s when they were competing for national championships and top 10 finishes. So Pat Narduzzi, if nothing else, he knows how to build a defensive line. They finish in the top 3 or 4 in the nation in sacks every year. They have the best record in the Coastal Division during his tenure. So that's with the presence of North Carolina recruiting better, Miami recruiting better, but Pitt playing better on the field. Pat Narduzzi's a heck of a coach, makes some ridiculous, stupid statements at times about NIL, about USC, about the Big Ten and others, but in terms of producing wins on the field, a 9-4 finish in 2022, we've got Pat Narduzzi at number 33 in the nation. At number 32, we go to Iowa and Kirk Ferentz, the dean of Big Ten coaches, the dean of national coaches. Stable program. He is highly respected. He is a tremendous builder and sustainer of a program that goes 8-4, 8-4, 8-4. When I think 8-4, I think Iowa. However, he took over the program, we're talking in 23 years ago, and did a tremendous job of turning the worst program in the Big Ten and the worst team in the Big Ten to a top 10 team and finished in the top 10 3 consecutive years, 2002, 3, and 4. And at that point, I considered this guy to be one of the best in the business. Even almost a decade later, as they competed against Ohio State back-to-back years for a Big Ten championship and fell just short, still one of the best in the business, considering the recruiting challenges being in Iowa. However, here we are 15 years later, and he has not won a Big Ten championship since 2004. He's never won an outright Big Ten championship, and he's come close. He came close in 2015, schedule-aided, undefeated regular season. But look at this offensive situation. I'm not going to get into it right now because if you follow us here at the Voice of College Football, you know that we've covered this ad nauseum. We've got an Iowa channel. What is going on with the offense? Kirk Ferentz could be one of the top 10 to 15 coaches in America. However, he refuses to deal with an offense that is deplorable, awful, beyond belief. And this happens year after year after year after year. He is holding back the program. Again, this is not for us to stop and talk about the Iowa dysfunction. Kirk Ferentz is the 32nd ranked coach on our list. At number 31, we go to Miami and Mario Cristobal. And I am going to guess that we could get a wide range of opinions and rankings on one Mario Cristobal as well. Master recruiter. Once was at Alabama. I'm sure he learned quite a bit under Nick Saban. He ran a great program at Oregon. He ran a, good program at Oregon. They won a Rose Bowl. They went to a Fiesta Bowl. They won the Pac-12 a couple times. They were really good. Now he's hired a new offensive coordinator coming in from Houston and Shannon Dawson. It'll be interesting to see if Mario Cristobal's loosened up, if he's going to be flexible and allow that offensive coordinator to diversify the offense. You can still be heavy running game, heavy offensive line, and try to build a tough football team. But Mario Cristobal, certainly, I'm concerned about this first season at Miami, and I know that the optimistic Miami fans want to say, well, he's building a program, so he had to tear it down and build from the ground up. But when you inherit a top 15 roster and you go 5-7 and look as bad as they did multiple times throughout the season, getting blown out by the likes of Middle Tennessee and Duke and others, I would think that any coach that we've seen who's ultimately been successful at a program has come in, even in year one, even though they were going through the demolition project elsewhere, they were still improving the on-field product immediately. Mario Cristobal didn't do that, certainly. They were worse under him than Manny Diaz, and that's one of the reasons why his ranking is number 31 in the nation. At number 30, we go to Kansas State And what a program Bill Snyder built. I don't know that few people really can appreciate what Bill Snyder did at Kansas State. And now Kansas State football is respected. They're roughly a top 25 program, and all of that is due to Bill Snyder. Now Bill Snyder steps away, and of course Chris Kleiman's been the leader of this program now for 4 seasons, and he worked through quarterback injuries this past season to lift this program to a Big 12 championship. Chris Kleiman won FCS championships. He's a winner. And he is taking on all the challenges at Kansas State, and he is coming out on top. So he posted a lot of Kansas State type of seasons with 7 and 8 wins prior to 2022. We will see if he will be able to continue to compete in an expanded Big 12 with the likes of the 4 new programs coming on board. Chris Kleiman's our number 30 coach in the nation. At number 29, we go to South Carolina and Shane Beamer. We have talked about what he accomplished in year 1 with 4 different quarterbacks, none of them qualified to play starting quarterback in the SEC. Still won 7 games, won a bowl game in beating North Carolina. This past season did not look like a good follow-up season for most of the campaign. However, they hit the end of the season and they tore into Tennessee and Clemson to conclude the season. And if you are South Carolina, you are overjoyed in defeating Clemson for the first time in 8 or 9 years and beating Tennessee, who outside of Georgia could be argued as the class of the SEC this past season. Shane Beamer's got a good thing going there. He just pulled in Nicholas Harbor as one of the top recruits in the 23 class, had a fine recruiting class otherwise as well. Shane Beamer's got something going there at South Carolina. Hoping to deliver a Big Ten championship at Illinois is a monumental task. And Brett Bielema is taking it on. And he took a huge leap forward in year 2, going from 5 wins to 8. And Illinois was oh so close to having many more than 8 wins, as they were far and away, I believe, the best team in the Big Ten Western Division, but they just blew certain games against certain teams. And if you saw them play late in the season against Michigan, a top 5 team in the nation, you see that Brett Bielema has upgraded the play at Illinois considerably, despite not great recruiting classes. Of course, he had the strong run at Wisconsin, which included 3 consecutive Rose Bowl trips. Then he went to Arkansas, and I believe if you really dissected his work at Arkansas, it's better than it looks on the surface and what most people believe. They had one down year, and he got fired for that. Then he went to the NFL, and he has stated he learned so much in the NFL. He basically took his core values from a football standpoint, added to it, and understands what needs to be done at the collegiate level now to win big. Illinois was so much better this past season. We will see if Brett Bielema continues to be able to build upon that in Champaign. On to our 27th ranked coach in the Power 5, and it's Dave Doeren of NC State. I posted a video a few years ago just basically saying, why does Dave Doeren have a job? He's been at NC State for 7 or 8 years. He is winning 37% of his conference games. The only reason NC State goes to bowl games is because they schedule the likes of Richmond and William and Mary and East Carolina and others in non-conference play. But over the past few years, I got to say, Dave Doeren has impressed me with lifting his team. They've had 3 strong seasons in a row. They should have been better this past season, although Devin Leary, his starting quarterback, got hurt. We are still waiting for the big season. They've had a couple showdowns with Clemson where they had the opportunity to break through, to take over the division, and they failed. So Dave Doeren, NC State, will he forever go 8-4, which is a nice showing at NC State, and they seem to be happy with that, or will he finally break through? At number 26, we go to UCF, now a Power 5 team, and Gus Malzahn. He had a marginal stay at Auburn for the most part. If you really look at what he did there, he barely finished 500 in the SEC, but he had 2 standout years in 2013 when you take a team that went 3-9 the year before and went winless in conference and lift them within a play of the national championship. And then in 2017, of course, he defeated 2 number 1 teams in the final month to get to the SEC championship game. Those are the standout plays on Gus Malzahn's resume. Offensive mind, offensive guru, that's his calling card. That's where it started at Arkansas State, of course. Now he's back in the Power of Five. Is he going to be able to recruit better possibly to UCF now that they've got a Power 5 schedule and he can sell to recruits? Hey, let's go to the Big 12. Let's win the Big 12. Let's go to a college football playoff. That could be. Our number 26 coach in the nation is Gus Malzahn of UCF. At number 25 is a guy that for several seasons at Iowa State, he was considered to be the hot commodity across the nation. Any coaching search seemed to lead with Matt Campbell. Now he's had a couple down years at Iowa State, and we shall see if he's able to continue this surge at Iowa State, but it seems to have stalled. And maybe that's all that Iowa State can accomplish. He took over a program that was winning 2, 3, 4 games a season, lifted it to a consistent 7-5, 8-4 caliber, but nothing else now. So has he hit the ceiling? Matt Campbell's an excellent football coach, but is he a miracle worker? At one point we thought maybe. At this point it seems as though that might be a little bit too much to ask. Our number 25 coach in our Power 5 rankings, Matt Campbell, Iowa State. On to number 24, and we go to Baylor, and defensive guru Dave Aranda did the work at LSU to earn him the job at Baylor, had the huge 2021 season coming off a 2-7 COVID year in 2020. Then he, in 2021, leads Baylor to the Big 12 championship. They defeat Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. Was that an aberration? They came back down to earth, only won 6 games this past year. Dave Aranda has a tremendous reputation across college football. Everybody speaks to him being a superstar in the making. We shall see what he does at Baylor, or maybe he leaves for a bigger job sometime soon. As we go to another former Baylor coach in Matt Rhule at Nebraska. He's delivered 2 big program builds at Temple and Baylor. Consider it Baylor. They won 1 game his first year, and then he had them going to the Big 12 championship game and winning 11 games just a couple years later. He's got everything at Nebraska you could ever want. He's got facilities. He's got the brand. He's got the backing, the support, the money, the everything except recruiting. Recruiting is going to be difficult for Matt Rhule at Nebraska. If he recruits in the top 25 in the nation, then he's got a chance to build a winner at Nebraska, as previous coaches have, most recently Bo Pelini. Matt Rhule at Nebraska, our number 25 coach in college football. We move it on to number 22, and Mike Norvell of Florida State. Rhule at 23, Norvell at 22. I'll have to go back and look to see where I had Norvell ranked 1 season ago. Of course, it didn't get off to a good start, but he inherited a bad situation at Florida State. The culture had to be changed, and he talked about changing it. Was there some evidence of it? Yes, but finally it hit the field here in 2022 with 10 wins and 6 consecutive wins to close the season. They don't quite have a Florida State roster yet in terms of top-end talent all over the field and depth, but it's getting there, and it's mostly getting there through the transfer portal. He's been really good at hitting the portal and bringing in experienced talent from elsewhere. However, the recruiting has not been up to Florida State standards. He's on his way, though. The 2024 class looks optimistic. At number 22, one of the chic picks for ascension into the elite ranks for 2023 out of a lot of analysts out there, Mike Norvell and Florida State. And then finally, to conclude part 2 in our series, Jonathan Smith of Oregon State. Jonathan Smith, I remember looking at these articles in SB Nation and the rundowns from Bill Connolly, where Oregon State, at the time that Jonathan Smith took over this program, had the worst metrics of any program in college football, meaning offensive and defensive metrics of any team in 20 years. And that is not an easy place to try to build something, to bring in recruits. And the recruiting rankings have not been kind to Jonathan Smith, but he has developed players beyond their recruiting. Needs to find a quarterback. Maybe found one in DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson. we shall see if he's able to get something out of him that's better than what Dabo Swinney, Brandon Streeter, and company did at Clemson. And the good thing about the Jonathan Smith with a matchup with Oregon State is that it's, of course, his alma mater. He was the last one to win big there as a quarterback in the early 2000s. And so Oregon State may have found its man, but also found its man who is willing and wants to stay there and win big. They went 10-3 this past season with a bowl win against Florida, finished in the top 15 in the nation. What a job done by our number 21 coach, Jonathan Smith of Oregon State. Folks, leave your comments down in the comments section below. Keep in mind that we've got a part 1 of this series where we run through our coaches number 69 through 45. Then we've got this video. We will cap it off with our top 20 coaches, and then we go live with you. And we are awaiting your comments, your questions, your feedback on our coaches rankings for 2023 right here at the Voice of College Football.